Lisa. We're now live streaming on YouTube, so this is the official start of our continued House Appropriations Committee afternoon meeting. On the schedule today at 3:30 is the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board. And let's see, Gus Seelig, you are with us, and in just a minute I will have you introduce your team, but welcome, and you have a lot of news to share with us, the activities that you've been engaged in since our bills have passed in June. We have with us the House General Committee, and welcome. Representative Stevens, you were down here in the corner, and now I'm looking to see where, there you are, you moved on me.
I didn't move it. I didn't move an inch.
So, as you know, you joined us earlier for the military. This seems to be a system that's working really well in this very quick time frame that we have. And so the same, I don't have to go through all the same rules, you know, ask questions, you know, when we have common stopping points. And we look forward to a memo from you, a very informal memo, either in whole or in sections, however it best suits your committee. But when you have information you could send on to us on recommendations, whether it's VHCB or the lottery or the military, we'll take them as you have them. And
That's great. Just a question for today's agenda, though. I mean, just we do have time scheduled for VHCB later this week, also to get an update on the programming that's been stood up this summer. So just a question of, are you spending much time on that this afternoon, or more about what the budget is actually proposed to be and how we're moving forward with that in this truncated session?
Sure. I think we're going to focus first on the budget, and we know of a 3% decrease that the administration explained in earlier testimony to us. We just want to hear. We understand that that was an agreed upon 3%, but we'd like to hear what impact it has on the VHC budget, and then any other budget concerns. Dave has that budget that he may want to raise, but then I would like to move right in to the CRF funding and how those initiatives are going. And I'd like to understand the money pieces first, what's going out the door, what's causing more harm, what may need to be readjusted. And then at the end, the policy pieces, you know, let's, you know, we might as well dive into those if we have time. And then you would finish up that work in your committee, and Dave would join you there.
Yeah, so that's fine. Just know that, you know, when we have VHCB in, we'll be just doing, I mean, just offering a deeper dive on some of the issues, depending on how much time you have today.
Right, absolutely.
But we have yet to hear as a committee, obviously, from VHCB. So no, that's fine. Thank you for having us. Your
committee members know that the real deep questions that go into policy, if you could hold those for your committee meeting so that we can get the general overview, so we all understand kind of what the scenario is looking like right now and getting these dollars out the door.
Yep. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Anything else you wanted to share, Tom, before we get started?
No, I mean, just my general, we've worked with VHCB. I've worked with VHCB. I know the speaker has, in terms of some of the issues that popped up between June 26th and today. So I really, again, have to just applaud VHCB and all the other partner agencies that we've been working with for standing up this program as quickly as they did. I mean, I think we'll all see a little bit that maybe we weren't perfect, but considering the time frame that we're working under and the stressors of a pandemic that we were working under, we should all really be proud of the work that they did in trying to do what we set them out to do, which is to try to find housing for the homeless. So that's really, I mean, for me, it's a feel-good situation, and the budget may be different than that, but in terms of the work that was done with the CRF money, I think this is a real, there's a lot of really good stuff to be proud of and to hear about.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you for the work of your committee. So I think we should just jump right in, and where there's natural stopping points, we'll ask questions. Welcome, Gus. And it's always nice to see you. We love your presentation because it shows all the good things that are happening around the state and in areas close to our own or even within our own towns and communities. So if you would just like to introduce your team, and we'll focus quickly on the budget because I don't think there's a lot of moving pieces since January, and then we will move transition right into the CRF funding that went out in June. And then any thoughts that you have regarding readjustments or changes or other pieces that might be needed as we complete our work in a couple weeks.
Okay. Well, thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, I'm Gus Seelig. I'm the Director for the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board. With me today is our Administrative Officer, Larry Myers.
Stevens, it's Kate McCarthy. It's about 1:30 on.
Our
Need
CFO.
everyone to mute. If everyone would mute except Gus, that might be helpful. Thank you.
Our CFO, Ann Duffy, if there are finance questions, and our Director of Policy and Special Projects, Jen Holler, is with me as well. And it is always a pleasure to be here. Usually we prepare a presentation that's 30 to 36 slides. We've got 12 today, knowing that you want to get through this. It's not organized quite in the way that you've just suggested. So I'm just going to start very briefly with the first question of the restatement of the budget, and there'll be a slide to deal with that in a little bit. And with a couple of caveats, given the size of our budget and the fact that your work with the Institutions Committee means that we have an overall increase in state funding, though not from the transfer tax, yes, we can handle the reduction proposed, which would be about $324,000. It means we will not do a project this year that we might otherwise want to do, but we will be able to handle that. Let me just briefly go to the next slide, Teresa, if we could show you what the impacts have been of our work in recent times. The biggest thing has been the housing revenue bond, which when complete will have generated 843 homes around the state, including homes for the homeless, and $225 million of construction and real estate activity. We've been very active with the farm community on water quality. We've helped the state now get 2 grants through a program called RCPP. Most recently, $10 million has been awarded to the state. We're pledging match to that. So while we can manage the reduction this year in order to meet our obligations for that match, we will likely be in front of you asking for more help next year. The Institutions Committee has given us water quality grants to give out to farmers. We've sent out almost $1 million in those grants to 30 farms, and they've put together another $3 million to complete their water quality projects. We talk a lot about our work in terms of rural community development, and I'll talk about one farm in particular in a couple moments as an illustration. But of the 44 conservation projects, farm conservation projects we've done over the last 2 years, when we think about our generational strategies to get the next generation into Vermont and keeping Vermont going, 21 of those projects were transfers to the next generation. And without the purchase of development rights, those transfers would not have been possible. That lowered their cost of acquisition. One of the things that's not in the budget, so this is one of the caveats, is what I think, Madam Chair, you think of as the grant writer program. The Rural Economic Development Initiative has been funded for 3 years on a one-time basis at $75,000. It's actually a line item in the Ag Agency's budget, and then they transfer the money to us. And that program has generated for communities under 5,000 and businesses in those communities a little over $4 million so far in federal, state, and philanthropic funding. When I was in front of you in the winter, I said this is a program that if I were in your seats, I'd want to double, and it will need your help if it's going to continue this year. And clearly, we continue to think the recreation economy and recreation opportunities in a time of social distancing will be important. If we could move to the next slide, Teresa.
Gus, just for clarification, so the grant writer program, it was 75,000.
Yes,
And that is in the quarter budget, didn't we? Was it that?
No, it's in the ag budget, but I think we had it on our list. But I'm not sure we
It's
did.
still there, yeah. So are you recommending, or are you putting an ask on the table to double that for this year to make it 150?
well, I will say to you, it needs to be in the budget at whatever level. We think it's been a great success. Whether this is the year you can double it is a discussion you need to have. We'd put it to good use, but certainly it needs to continue at the $75,000 level. And as we've talked with the ag agency, it was not clear to us or to them that it was in the first quarter budget. So that's something that we do think needs to be done. Maybe, I usually define our work in terms of what's in the statute, and it says that our work is important to both to economic vitality and quality of life. But there's another line in the statute that is really, really critical, and I think speaks to the work, the assignments you've given us under CRF. And what it tells my board to do is to consider the need for a timely response to unpredictable circumstances or special opportunities. More than a dozen times, there's been a fire in a downtown that we've responded to. We had a big response to Tropical Storm Irene. We've worked with corrections and getting women out of prison. Those are the pictures you see above. What you've asked us to do with CRF has been to help our emergency shelter system improve their safety and quality for residents. They've had to lower their capacity, and to secure permanent housing for Vermonters. And you also gave us $192,000 to assist the farm community. And we'll talk more in a moment about that, about what's going on in each of those areas. If we can move to the next slide. We have continued to be active, and as we speak, the 3 projects on the left are all about to open, will have opened by the middle of October in Virgins, in Lindenville, in Fairhaven. There's one more project not on your screen in Shaftesbury, just over the North Bennington line, that will also open. And we hope next year that we'll begin construction in downtown Morrisville. We've funded this project. It needs some funding from some other sources. It's a 5-minute walk both to the post office and the food co-op. And whenever it reopens, the movie theater, it's just a great location, and the River Arts Center. So those are all things we've been working on through the pandemic to continue to do that good work. If we can move on to the next slide. These are an example. This young couple, Gabby Tootie and Henry Webb, started their farm on a 1/4 acre of family land. Last year, they began to lease 25 acres just outside the village of Granville. And they are just doing a bang-up job. They just bought the farm this last week, again, with the aid of the Vermont Land Trust Farmland Access Program, the purchase of development rights, and support from the Farm and Forest Viability Program. And I guess what I want to say is we will complete this year's work, this year's budget, and not have matched and brought in about $1.4 million of federal funds that have been awarded to us for the purchases of development rights. We'll get another $3 million in the spring. Given the stresses on the state budget, I have asked Senator Leahy whether they can explore, and we're working with a national network, lowering the match requirement for the next 2 years. But I don't know if that will happen. It's currently dollar for dollar. We've asked them to lower it so that it could be at an 80-20 rather than a 50-50 level. But we will turn money back to the feds sometime next year if our appropriation doesn't continue to go up in this program. And we think it is just of great value. And as I said, these last 2 years, we've helped 21 young families get into farm ownership with the aid of this effort. Just to continue to move through the program to the next slide, Teresa, thank you. This year, Kingdom Trails lost access to from several landowners for cycling. They didn't lose access for walking, but they did for cycling. We've just helped them purchase their second parcel where they own it and can manage it as they see fit in East Burke. It's a huge economic driver in the Northeast Kingdom. And I think these resources, again, as we need to social distance and still get outdoors, will be of more value. The picture on the bottom is a beautiful parcel in southern Vermont that was also conserved this year. If we go to the next slide, I'll just talk about emerging needs and challenges. And this slide needed just a bit more editing before we gave it to you, but it speaks to potential spikes in homelessness due to the economic fallout that's taken place. And the reality is, when we did our point in time count of who was homeless in January, we counted just over 1,000 Vermonters without housing. By May, the Agency of Human Services was housing more than 2,000 Vermonters in motels across the state. They tell me, and we just talked the other day, they're not good at unduplicated counts, but since July, they've housed another 500 Vermonters. So homelessness has clearly gone up. We are seeing the demand for Vermont homes go up. There have been lots of anecdotal stories in the press, and especially true in southern Vermont, of people from out of state buying Vermont property sight unseen. I can tell you, because I have a daughter in New York and I look at the New York Times, that rents are down 10% in New York City. And as we all get used to working remotely, maybe this is going to help with our demographic challenges, but it will put more pressure on the real estate market. And there is, and it is a part of why, and I know I risk offending some members, why our funding has historically been tied to the transfer tax as a barometer of pressure in the real estate market. We saw this after 9/11, where prices in Vermont went up. And it really doesn't take that many people coming from southern New England, from New York, New Jersey, to buy property in Vermont to have a big impact on the economy. Great distress in the dairy economy, but the farm economy overall has also had to adjust greatly. And people who were selling to restaurants have lost markets. Well-established businesses like Jasper Hill have made big changes in their businesses as they've lost those markets. Some have been able to adjust, and clearly local food is even more important and more value to all of us than we might have even thought just a few months ago, even those of us who liked it a lot. I want to say a word about the conservation organizations who do great work. An event for one organization like Race to the Top in Stowe can't be held this year. Many of those organizations that rely upon outdoor events that would have gathered people have had to cancel them, and their budgets are struggling. Our housing providers really have employees who are right on the front lines, who are the heroes that you have tried to support. The Cathedral Square Corporation houses more than 1,000 elderly Vermonters. Champlain Housing Trust houses more than 2,000 families. They have had tenants who've had COVID. They've had to manage it. I know CHT has actually had maintenance workers who've contracted COVID. Fortunately, everyone who's had COVID so far has survived it, but they are very much on the front lines. They are renting, their staff are continuing to rent out units and interact with the public through the crisis. So there is sizable impact on their operations that we're doing the best we can to support. We've been supporting them by supporting work around the PPP program and any other resources that we can provide. So we are in a different time and a different atmosphere. If we go to the next slide, I'll talk a bit about the housing work on the coronavirus relief funding. So you gave us $32 million in two different tranches. It's been allocated to 13 homeless shelters, a total of 17 communities around the state. We, because of the time pressures on that funding. Even before you passed the first bill, we issued a request for letters of interest from all over the state. And we got more than $15 million of interest. We got more than about $40 million in actual applications. We've provided funding for 30 million. We have 2 new applications I expect will come in on Friday that we'll bring to our board on September 16th. In total, we're going to add 212 new apartments or emergency beds, and every shelter that sought funding got what they sought, provided it was CDC compliant and passed the tests that had been given to us for what was eligible. And so that's meant things like adding bathrooms, surfaces that are easier to clean, air systems to better handle air and ventilation in our shelters, in a couple of cases, small expansions. But we've been able to meet all of those requests to date. There are some projects that we're working on, and we've had to suspend some usual policies to make this all work, that have difficulty. There is one in Rutland that we didn't think would need an Act 250 permit. Turned out it did. I need to credit the Act 250 staff that once the application was submitted, they issued a draft permit within 2 working days. They've consolidated their comment and request for hearing period down to 7 days. So if none of the abutters ask for a hearing, that project will go forward beginning next week. If somebody does ask for a hearing, it probably then cannot be completed by the December 30th deadline. So we're working with lots of still moving balls to get all this money out the door, and to get it out with quality. We've hired a consultant who is especially supporting, along with 2 of our staff people, the shelters who are not as experienced in managing construction activity, to support them in that activity all over the state. We'll go to the next slide and stay on this theme. And I know one of the questions in your committee, and I'm sure in the health, in some of your colleagues' committees, is how closely are we working with the Agency of Human Services? And the answer is very, very closely. And I just would call out Sarah Phillips as a great public servant and a great partner. We've been talking about where are the greatest needs, where are the best possible projects. Everybody who's getting funding for permanent housing from us will use the coordinated entry system that's managed through the continuums of care to select people who've been homeless for those units. We've worked closely with the State Housing Authority, the Burlington Housing Authority, and the Rutland Housing Authority, which are also providing a fair amount of rental assistance to the extent that they can. AHS has put a premium on housing families, which we are also supporting. One of the reasons that there's so much activity in Bennington is there was both an opportunity, but also a large number of homeless families in the Bennington area. So that work, I think, is going really, really well, and I'm really appreciative of Sarah and her colleagues being really valuable partners through this effort. If I go to the next slide, I'll just talk for a moment about our work with the much smaller allocation that you gave us, $192,000, to support land-based businesses that are trying to manage through the crisis. And so far, we've helped 261 businesses. We hired several consultants, and we also have some regular partners who are working with them to do cash flow planning, to navigate which relief programs work best for them. In some cases, we've been able to bring on a consultant that helps them with how to do online and direct sales strategies. In some cases, we've helped them get to mediation or health resources that they've needed. Dairies have comprised more than half of the workload so far, but as you can see from the chart, we're helping forest products businesses, value-added producers, slaughter facilities, so on and so forth. So that's, and there are reports to the legislature on both these programs that you should have access to. If I go to the next slide, I'll just talk a little bit more about the Rural Economic Development Initiative. I've already told you, you're up one further, that it's generated $4.1 million in funding to date. The recent successes are for Jenna's Promise in Johnson, which is helping people with recovery, 2 value-added producer grants in Panton and in Glover, and an award to Jeffersonville from the Northern Borders Regional Commission. And so I won't repeat what I've already said, but I certainly hope that this program can be continued at least at the $75,000 level that it's been at. If there's an opportunity to increase it, we think, I can't tell you that it'll generate leverage at the same rate, but I can tell you it'll serve more rural communities if we can put the resources there. If we go to the next slide, this will give you a comparison between where we were in FY20 and where we will be with the restated budget. And as I said earlier, though there aren't one-time legacy funds, you have worked with your colleagues and Chair Emmons to increase our capital bill appropriation. And that's why we have said, yes, we can manage for 1 year a small reduction. That will not get the READY program funded. And as I've said, and this will be the last time I say it today, we anticipate we will need more support next year to continue to bring the federal farmland match dollars into the state. One thing we do intend to do to help manage the administrative burden and also to do correct accounting is we will need to charge just a small percentage, somewhere less in the 0.5% to 1.5% range of the CRF funding for the direct administrative staff costs that we incur, along with the consultants that we're hiring to support the various applicants. One more slide will just show you what our pipeline is as we most recently have measured it. So there's plenty of opportunity to do more good all over the state. And we look forward to working with you next year to continue that good work. And I'll come to the last slide here. And I'm happy to answer any questions. First, I just want to note that Representative Fagan and I were together in Rutland about 1.5 years ago. And you see there a photograph of a family that has benefited through Habitat for Humanity this year. But what Representative Fagan said to me that day was that he thought there'd just been a fatal fire. And he said he thought that the community was finally ready to deal with homelessness. So there is a project that we have funded through the revenue bond that we hope will be under construction this winter that will provide 19 apartments. And if both the projects funded with CRF are able to be successful, that will add 19 more units for the homeless, and Rutland is being very supportive of that. And I'm happy to answer all of your questions and address any concerns that you have.
Thank you, Gus, for this presentation. And I just had a quick question, and then I'm looking for other hands to go up. For the federal farmland dollars that you've sent in a request to Leahy to move it from a 50-50 split. Any idea of a timeline there when you should hear either yes or no, if that can be?
You know, I see that as something, knowing that you're planning not to return, that your successors will need to deal with in January. I've been told a couple different things, and I've worked with Nick Richardson and the Land Trust Alliance. So this is going to be a multiple state request because we're not the only state that likes this program and wants it to continue that's having budget problems. Depending upon the outcome of the election, if there's a switch, one of the first bills that people expect out of the box will be a climate bill. If there's a climate bill, there will probably be a rewriting of sections of the 5-year farm bill as part of that climate bill. So if that takes place, there'll be a vehicle to do that. The Leahy team is well aware of the difficulties the state has, and I will miss you, but we will talk with your successor about the need to match that. But I think that's a January issue, but I wanted to bring it up today because we hate to turn money back to the feds that can be well spent in Vermont.
Thank you, Gus. Representative Iacovone.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Gus, I want to understand, you've mentioned several times $75,000 for the grant writer. Is that an FTE?
No, we do charge some staff time to it, but we are often helping a local community hire a grant writer who writes just that grant with those dollars. So it's not an FTE in my shop. It would be, the dollar amount is
So what
near
do you-
what an FTE cost in state government, but we're not doing all the grant writing out of the Housing and Conservation Board.
So do you use it to contract out for someone else to do the grant writing?
Yeah, so an example just in my backyard, but this would have been true for the Albany store, is the East Calais General Store is a store that's been closed for about 9 months. They just got a Northern Borders grant. We gave them assistance to hire a grant writer to help them get that Northern Borders grant. Same thing happened with the folks who were trying to reopen the store in Albany. So we're not writing the grants for the most part in our shop, but we are helping to make sure that they get written, and we're providing services to match up these local communities with people, who can help, right? Same thing with a
So when
value added.
when you say double it, you're saying there's a lot more capacity out there to leverage more dollars if we had the capacity. That's kind of your message, I presume. So
That is my message, yes.
okay. So on the one hand, and I really appreciate it, you're saying you want to do your share. You took a 3% reduction. I'm sure it's not easy. You'll manage to it. But is it because of that reduction in part that you won't be able to do the grant writer program?
The grant writer program was never in our budget. It was in a line item for the Agency of Agriculture, and they sent the money to us. So in other words,
No,
the total reduction
can't
to
send it
us
to you.
is $400,000, not $325,000. If that position's not funded.
so yeah. So what happens with ag, if you didn't have to take the full $325,000 reduction, might you use some of that for the grant writer, or would you put it elsewhere? Because you mentioned, I think you mentioned at the beginning of your presentation that that reduction means one less project. I think that's the word you used. Tell me what you would do if you didn't have to have the whole reduction, please.
Well, we haven't talked with our board about that, but what I'm saying to you is a typical 10, 12 unit housing project might get $300,000. The typical farm project costs $340,000. Typical recreation project might be 2 recreation projects are probably in the $100,000 to $200,000 range. So it depends on, we haven't had that discussion, but yes, one way or another to continue the grant writer work, we need $75,000, whether it comes directly or continues to come through the ag agency.
Yeah, and I'm just exploring here because we have no idea what our capacity is. But I think maybe there's a question I saw, and Madam Chair, if I may, I'm not running the meeting, but I saw Jen raise her hand and maybe it was related to the question. May I recognize her?
And I think Chip may have an answer to that too, but Jen, let's hear from you. And if Chip, if you have a follow-up on that as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wonder if it might help if we make the distinction that this was created by the legislature 3 or 4 years ago. It's never been embedded into our or the ag agency's budget, but you have chosen to fund it with one-time funds each of the last 3 budgets. So that's why it sort of stands on its own. So if it's to go forward, Gus and we are asking the committee to think about whether
Well,
another appropriation could be made along those lines.
So
if I can continue, Madam Chair, just on
Yeah,
on
Dave,
this, or did you want to recognize Chip?
Dave, I have out to JFO and out to the Agency of Ag about the $75 for the grant writer. As Jen said, it's never been in the base budget for the agency's budget. And I can't remember if we put it in the Q1 budget or not, but it was on our one-time list, which is long gone. So if it's not in the Q1 budget, we would want to put it back on a one-time request list for us to consider when we wrap up this budget.
Thank you. I'll stop my questioning. Thank you.
Okay. Representative Kalaki?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Gus, thank you for the report. And I'm looking at the 32 million for the Corona Relief Fund. And as you know, it's part of an $85 million package of rehousing Vermonters that we put together. As we're going to look at all the different buckets, it looks like you have fully allocated the dollars. If there were more available, if other programs are undersubscribed, would it be possible in this timeline to do even more? And which parts would be possible?
So Representative Kalaki, we can discuss this more on Friday. I expect we'll get 2 projects coming in this Friday that will request more money than the 2 million that is remaining to be allocated. I think what I've also said to you, there's one project that needs an Act 250 permit. So if it falls out, I may not need any more money, but if it continues, there may well be a need, but we can talk about that in more detail on Friday.
Thank you. I'm good.
Thank you. Chip, did you have an update on the grant writer? Your hand went down.
No, I've written to Diane at the agency to try to get an understanding. I had remembered that there was money in their original FY21 proposal because I think I asked specifically about it. And I've gone back and looked, and the only reference I can find says it's under their carry forward money, and it said appropriated in 2019 and granted and will be granted to VHCB in FY20. So I'm a little confused about, because I know we've done it over
Many years.
2 or
We'll
3
sort
years.
it out.
But I don't think it was in the Q1 budget specifically. And so I'm hoping to hear back from Diane shortly about whether it's in there at all for FY21. And if it's not, I'm with Dave and others. I'm looking for ways that we can figure out how to try to get some funding to it this year to keep it going.
Thank you, Chip. Representative Troiano.
Yes, Gus, I don't know if this came to you or not, but I'm curious and I haven't heard about the grants for landlords to take blighted properties put blighted properties back on the market. Do you have any information on that? How that was being used, or?
I think that's Commissioner Hanford's program, and I think it'd be best if he speaks to you directly about it on Friday. I think you're going to have us all in, so.
Yeah, thanks. I'll ask him. Thank you.
Representative Hooper.
Thank you. Rep. Kalaki asked the question about the current capacity to do more projects. If we were able to provide more money, so if the CRF funding were extended beyond the deadline we have now or freed up and how it could be used, could you develop, what could you use to meet both the housing needs? And then I'm also very interested in the economic development potential on kind of the conservation, rural economic development side.
So we have discussed with Senator Leahy's office whether Congress might extend the December 30th deadline. There are projects, let me say, our biggest disappointments is that we had partners negotiating for housing sites, both in central Vermont and in the Upper Valley, which are high needs areas from the Agency of Human Services perspective. And ultimately the sellers decided they would not sell. And so we did not come up with good projects in both of those communities that have high need. Obviously, if the deadline is extended and extended significantly, there will be an opportunity to revisit those communities and other places and get more good work done all over the state. So we would look forward to that, but it will take Congress acting on a bill when they come back after Labor Day. And, you know, your guess is as good as mine of whether they will do that or not.
Yes, we're all kind of waiting with bated breath to see what happens, and fingers crossed, yes. My question was, if there is money there, do you have projects that you could roll out over the next year or so? It was extraordinary what you did to get the guarantee that you would get this done by the 20th of December. I'm wondering if the pipeline's dried up or if you have room to do more if we have the extension.
I think it will depend in part on what kind of extension we have. If it's 90 days, which is something I've heard has been talked about, maybe one project. If, as the Leahy folks have said to us, they'd like the states to have 2 more years to get all the money expended, then yes, there'd be lots of projects. You know, there's an old school in Barrie that's owned by the Housing Authority. And because it's owned by the Housing Authority, it would need a HUD sign off before it can be converted into housing. And that process wouldn't take less than 6 months to go through because of how HUD does its business. So that would become a viable project. In my experience, over 30 years of people negotiating real estate, some of the projects that fell apart because a seller decided not to sell, sometimes there's more than one family member. And 6 months later, after they have a tough winter, they say, gee, maybe we really ought to sell. And a deal comes back together. So deals can come back to life even when people have said, no, I'm not ready to do it. And I think that there will be more opportunities. And I think one of the good things about this whole process, as condensed and hard as it has been, and people have worked nights and weekends, and I'm not talking about my staff so much, though they have as well, but people in your communities, people at Down Street Housing, people at Rural Edge, have worked nights and weekends trying to pull these things together. So I'd be very confident if there were 2 years to spend money, that there will be good projects that will have come out of all the discussions that took place over the spring and summer, if there are resources to make them happen.
Thank you. And I'm assuming essentially the same answer on the conservation side. Again, if there were additional funds with enough time and flexibility, you haven't dried up that pipeline of opportunity.
No, I mean, that's not CRF eligible necessarily. The
Right
CRF is technical assistance to help people who are in difficulty, but the conservation work itself has been ongoing and will be.
Okay, Mary, did you have a follow-up or were you finished? I think you're finished. You're muted now.
Well, if Gus said, and here is another group of people who all over the state just did absolutely phenomenal work, and were able to, in part because of the network that has been created, what, now over 40 years, probably, thanks to the leadership of VHCB, there was something in place that could respond to this urgent need and met it. You guys blow my socks off, and I just wanted to say thank you for that.
Well, we really appreciate your giving us the opportunity to take this on. We appreciate it very, very much.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments for Gus or any of his team? We do have the grant writer on the list, so that will not fall to the wayside. It's on our radar. Representative Stevens, we look forward to your committee's testimony at the end of the week, knowing where we are with CRF and additional needs and adjustments that may need to take place. And I am not seeing any other questions. Gus, was there anything else you would like to present to the committee?
Well, I guess I just want to add my thanks, and I know several of you are planning not to return next year, so this may be the last time in this capacity I'm working with Representative Myers, but we've gotten a couple good projects done in Essex, and Representative Conquest, we've just funded redevelopment of a project that Al Stevens, one of your predecessors, set forth in Wells River, and it'll be under construction this winter. But Chair Toll, I was precocious, and I first walked into the Appropriations Committee as a very young man sent by a community action director when Madeline Kunin was in your seat. And I just want to thank you for continuing a long tradition. We're at a time where people are really worried about democracy in this country, and the manner in which, whether you were sitting on the side of the table or the head of the table, you've made it possible for us to come in, not just the Housing and Conservation Board, but Vermonters of all types to make their cases and be heard and get a fair hearing. And I just want to thank you for your stewardship of this committee and the budget. And we've really appreciated your leadership. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Gus. I appreciate the kind words, but I want to know about the project in my town. I've seen all the other projects in everyone's town.
Well, we've gotten a couple done in your district, and I just want to say in that last slide, those one of your former neighbors, Jim Keeney, had been on our board for 6 or 8 years, and when he left the board, what he said to me was that every time he drove past the Mollybrook farm and that great scenic view, it just made him really proud of the work he was able to do. And you've helped us do that in your community and all over the state. And there will be more in Peacham and Danville and Cabot to come.
I do have to say, as far as the Northeast Kingdom is going, Newport has a lot of issues, but in St. Johnsbury, doing that corner block on Railroad Street is one of the most important projects that you could be doing in the kingdom. That has been such a blight to the area, and the excitement and enthusiasm that's already being seen from the changes. I can't tell you how important that project is to St. Johnsbury, which impacts the whole region. So Representative Troiano.
I just wanted to add a little bit to that. Again, on the St. Johnsbury project, which will be a real uplifting for the town of St. Johnsbury, for their for not only housing but for their economic development and such. But I also read as part of one of your slides, the director of NECA talking about increasing the shelter capacity in the Northeast Kingdom. That's something I've been speaking of for a number of years right now, and I was very happy to see that that's happening, where there had actually been 10 beds for the entire kingdom at one point in time, not too long ago. So again, thanks for all that, Gus.
Thank you.
Representative Feltus.
While we're thanking, I want to say thank you for the 2 new projects in Lindenville, the housing projects there. I had a tour of them a week or so ago, and they are really very nice. They replace some older, very dilapidated properties, and people are moving in already and they're enjoying them. So thanks you.
Glad it's looking good. I haven't been in there yet myself, but the outside photos, it's a much better look as you enter town from that direction now, I think.
Sure. Any other final comments for any of the VHCB team? We look forward, Tom, then from your recommendations from your committee. And Tom, did you have any closing remarks you wanted to make?
Just a quick question for you, Representative Toll. When are you looking for a deadline of comments from us? I mean, when last we met, it was as soon as possible. We're meeting with the military tomorrow with the full committee, so we'll have a comment about that and the scholarships by tomorrow afternoon for you.
So if we could finish our work on Thursday, September 3rd, we would be able to proofread a budget and pass it out on Friday the 4th, which is a week from Friday. That is really aggressive timing. But our alternative date is, and would be to finish our work on Friday and pass a budget out the next Tuesday, because that Monday is Labor Day. And so Thursday and Friday of next week are our drop dead dates.
No, okay, we'll have time. We'll have it by the end. We'll have it at least on these two issues by the end of this week.
Wednesday. Wednesday the 2nd would be the latest.
Yeah, that's fine. I think we can do that. And also, I just like to bottle all this good feeling for VHCB and the work they're doing when whoever's going to be in charge of the Appropriations Committee next year and the property transfer tax, which I'm sure will be increasing due to the number of sales that we've been seeing across the board. I know it's going to be a difficult budget year, but this is the kind of testimony that really we get the privilege of seeing every year, of knowing what the projects are and how they affect everybody's communities. And I hope that we can continue, like I said, bottle this good feeling and trust that the work that gets done is being done for the benefit of the Vermonters and the communities we serve.
Thank you, Tom. And thank you for your committee for joining us. I think this is really helpful in hearing both committees and the challenges and moving forward more quickly. And Gus, thank you for you and your team for the projects that you've done across our communities that are providing housing and making our communities look, improving our economies in the downtown with these, and also your help on the dairy and forestry end. It's important, and we will be following up on the grant writer, and we'll be actively awaiting any recommendations from the Committee of Jurisdiction.
Okay.
So I'm going to let you go so you can get back to work and see if you can get a couple of more of those projects going.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thanks to both committees.
Thank you.
Take care now.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so Tom, thank you. And Commerce Committee, General Housing, we'll see you at another time. Appropriations Committee, I have a question for you. It's 4:25, and I think that brings us to the end of our day. So I'm not going to ask us to close off any more language now, unless you really want to go through some more language.
Kitty?
Yeah.
I have another meeting I have to go to in 5 minutes. So it's our Visiting Nurses Association meeting that I need to go to in 5 minutes. So it would not be my preference to attempt to close.
Peter.
We paid Peter to say that.
You can give me coffee later.
Two
things though.
Oh, go ahead.
We paid Peter, but we took it from Paul.
Yeah, two things though. Number one, today in Corrections and Institutions, the chair asked me to relay that the Woodside, regarding something about the Woodside Middlesex process. So the replacement for Woodside is going to be built on the Middlesex ground, providing the legislative issue is resolved. There's still a legislative piece resolved, and I might have gotten that a little backwards, but I think that I'm not sure if it's Mary's budget. Nod, Mary, if it is.
Woodside belongs to Kimberly.
Okay, so it's at any rate.
But mental health is.
Yeah, they are working that issue, and it's a legislative issue, and that's what she wanted us to tell me, and I probably did a poor job writing the note, but everything went well this morning otherwise. And what the heck was the second thing? So section D 101 sub 3, the $28 million worth of reversions, I've been
You're
able to
talking about
ascertain that's FY20 money. Now, I think that we may have, there may have been a statement that it was FY21 estimates. It is not. That is FY20 money that was left over at the end of the year, and those carry forwards were swept appropriately.
Close
So,
out, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, I sent the commissioner of BGS scurrying just a little bit, but that's okay.
Oh,
So,
101. Okay, we closed it out. Thank you, Peter.
yes, we closed it, but it's, I just wanted to make sure
It's
everyone
20 and not
got that.
21.
So,
Thank
yep.
you.
So I'm going to leave right now. Talk to you later. See you
Okay,
tomorrow.
and
Oh,
Teresa,
what time tomorrow?
Teresa, we are on tomorrow at 8:30. The only
Okay.
new schedule that anyone has asked for is the Attorney General's office. And so that means everyone else is taking care of their own budgets, that there's just small changes. Is that correct? And if you find tonight that you need to have another department in or entity in, we've got to know quickly. So we're, the AG, do you know when the AG is coming, Teresa?
Can I just get clarified? I just sent you a message. So Representative Conquest, you want a judiciary, not the AG, right? Is that correct?
No, that particular issue, I haven't heard back from judiciary yet. But,
Okay, so I've
that
scheduled
particular
that.
issue was about the AG's office, particularly diversion, the diversion program. So that would be Willa.
Okay, I did
Income.
not see that email. So, so I have scheduled judiciary for 11:30 tomorrow because I thought there was some things that you needed. I can change that.
So I haven't heard back. I wrote to them to see if there were things that they had problems with that they thought we needed to hear about. Why don't I get back to you later tonight about whether or not we should have judiciary, but we definitely need to have the AG's office.
Okay, I'll reach out to them right now.
And Linda?
I just want to make sure we're going to continue reading tomorrow morning. We got through page 33, which I wasn't through, so which I got to read tonight. But is that what we're anticipating at 8:30? Because Commerce is meeting at 8:30 tomorrow morning, but I don't think they're going to be far enough along after today's conversation with them to actually me jump in, but even though I can if I want to.
So we are just shelving budgets, and you can call me or, you know, the committee, there's several committee members that could walk you through quickly and just say, closed, closed, open, open, closed, and tell you what that is if you would like. I can do that with you, Linda, if you want to stick on the phone, or we'll just figure it out. However it works for you. So and that's where we're going to pick up, and it's shelving, not closing, because everything is until we close this budget out permanently.
I'll work on it, and then I'll call whomever. So.
Okay, so just so you know, the committee's position of things that we agreed should be that I don't see any problems with.
Okay.
Okay, so 8:30 tomorrow morning, have your language, and everybody has their ups and down sheets, and your web report is really important. And we probably won't get to the web. We're not going to start the web report until
the mail comes.
Exactly.
I'm trying to think if there are areas we could shelf during or before the public hearings if we have time, and I bet there will be. So if we have, we'll do it. Okay, we're moving right along.
I've got an idea I'm going to send to you.
We ready to go off live?
Yep.